You are tuned to another episode of In Town Today. I'm David Charles and I will be joined shortly by my co-producer Helen King. We extend a warm welcome to you specifically and to all our other listeners, whether you're travelling, working or maybe just relaxing. In Town Today is where we talk with people either living, working or just visiting our town. We talk about their business, their occupation, their event, or their motivating passion in life, or at least one of them. In this episode, we're meeting two people and two friends, and one being a new colleague with us in Connect. They both speak passionately about life in the world today, importantly viewing all our lives from a spiritual perspective. As is usual with the people we meet, their first point of interest, today a business they run, is not the only fascinating thing we will learn about them, as we will discover very shortly. Our two guests today on our podcast are filmmaker at Dragonfly Pictures, Rob Uzzell, together with fellow traveller Paul Baxter. I'd just like to read for you one short introductory paragraph describing Rob. Rob's a world traveller and adventurer, exploring different cultures and letting go of what is comfortable in pursuit of what is authentic and in integrity with the observer of himself, dedicated and in service to growing consciousness awareness. Well, there's a loaded paragraph if ever I heard one. But I'm joined today by my co-producer Helen King.
Hello.
And Rob is here.
Hi, David.
And Paul. So, Rob, can we get you to explain what is meant by that intriguing paragraph?
Okay, yeah. So, initially, like anyone else, I was born into a world and accepted the reality that I was faced with, growing up. Although I would say it didn't take long for it to start not really seeming to make much sense, sitting in a school classroom and daydreaming and being told off for it and learning things that I wasn't particularly interested in wasn't getting me very far. I was obviously finding myself becoming a bit lost in the way I was feeling inside and with the people around me. The nature of reality wasn't making much sense. And I could say it's akin to when you step out of school and the first thing you do is you go to a job interview and you recognise that actually in order to get that job, you have to lie. If you told the truth, I just need the job so I can make some money, or because I'm skint, or because I need to put food on the table, then that's not going to be enough to get you the job. You have to embellish, you have to manipulate with words, and you might say brown-nose the company people, and tell them that you love their company and all of this stuff, which is, for most people, probably not true. It's just the fact that they need the job to make money or survive, and that's why they're going for it. So certain things through my life were telling me that this reality is very different to what we're told it is. It's not very authentic. It doesn't feel true to me. So I started to look into alternative ways of being and living. I should say that I went through some challenging times living in the reality that we call society. I was a teacher in South Korea for a few years, and that's when I really began my process of what I'd call an awakening. And recognizing, I watched a video which I think it was called Zeitgeist, and that started me on this process of tumbling through lots of rabbit holes and looking at information that I hadn't come across before in my life that was painting a very different story as to what this world is really about.
So you having a bit of a Neo experience, Neo from the Matrix, and
right.
You thought there was something wrong with society, but you didn't know what it was. It was kind of like that?
Very similar to that, yeah. In fact, exactly like that, yeah. And, the more I was trying and testing different things in this life, everything was telling me and reinforcing that it's something doesn't feel authentic, something doesn't feel true about all of this.
Right.
So there, with all of the times I tried something new, I would, you could say I failed, you could say I got fired on occasion, you could say I just wanted to move on and try something new, to try and find my way and find something that did feel real and true and authentic. But through all of that, there were many challenges. I suffered with addiction issues and went off the rails quite often. I had to leave South Korea. I think if I'd have stayed there, I'd have probably died of chronic alcoholism. And it was essentially a place where I began this awakening, and I started being quite open about it and talking to people and saying, hey, doesn't something feel a bit off? Have you checked out this information? And this was sort of around 2008, 2009. And in that time of telling people, all I got as a response was, you're crazy, you're mad, and feeling very alienated, more and more so. So, I turned to drugs and alcohol and other things to fill this void that was in my life. Specifically, I think, in my heart, where I felt that life was not authentic. I was not able to be in my integrity. So left South Korea and then took another job as a tour guide. Didn't last very long doing that, and was still sort of working through depression and things like that. 2012, I had what I can only describe as a sort of a walk-in experience, where for 2 weeks I had this incredibly terrible headache. Literally, if I moved my head, it felt like it was going to fall off, and from that moment on, I was in bed for 2 weeks. We tried all the painkillers under the sun, nothing worked. It was excruciating. I could feel, it was almost like things were being pulled out of my head and other things put in. And then as quickly as it came, it left after about 2 weeks. And something had obviously shifted in my life. I didn't know it at that moment. I just felt grateful to be better again. But as that year went on, many things started to happen. I reconnected with a girl who really helped me shift out of my old patterns and habits into new ways of being and viewing and experiencing this world, this reality. And that was, changing the books I was reading from things like 1984, George Orwell, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, and so on, to much more positive books that were not, instead of reinforcing the sort of Orwellian state that I was seeing emerging, I was reading things that were about self-empowerment and fulfilling your life through learning more about the self, and that reality actually is an inside job. It's not out there. So we can touch on this when we talk later about education as well, because that's a huge area of this, I think, seeing as our future is our children. But just to mention, education, the root of the word is educar, which means to draw out from within, not to stuff in from, right. Which is what the current education system does, is it makes you repeat and regurgitate information from out there. It's not allowing the expression that's inside each and every one of us, the unique gifts and talents that we all have. It's not nurturing those. Instead, it's preparing children for a system, a very antiquated system, and a future that's already expired, quite frankly.
Well, we've spoken before about a gentleman called Sir Ken Robinson, an educationalist. Unfortunately, he's not with us now, but he speaks eloquently all of the time, but particularly so on making it clear that people being educated today are being educated for a world that, when they get to it, will be out of date anyway. So we're not preparing our children with the basis of the tools to progress and thrive in the world that they will inherit. Instead of that, we're teaching the tools that we have today, knowing full well that they will almost be useless, or they're certainly less than useful by the time they come to use them in adult life.
Yeah, precisely. And there are far more important things that our kids can be learning. Life skills, practical life skills, how to recognise your emotions and work with them and work through them, how to sit with pain and understand the self, how to identify with self and not distractions from the self. Learning about the inner reality from that place which you can then create the reality around you once you have understood that you have these different aspects of self working within you. You have 4 different bodies. You have your physical body, your etherical body, your mental body, and your emotional body. And all of these bodies need to be in harmony and balance, but they're not, because most people aren't even aware that they have those 4 things going on. That's a huge area. And again, having taught in South Korea, I'm not someone who's just sort of coming out of nowhere with this information. I saw the education system firsthand. I know that it sucks. In Korea, it's even worse than here. Those poor children are worked to death. By the time they're 16, they're burnt out because the competition for university places there is so incredibly high. They have to go to all of these private academies after normal school. So then they will have mountains of homework. They will get home sometimes, if they're 10 and 11, they're in school until 10 o'clock at night. So they won't get home until 11 o'clock. Then they've got about 3 hours worth of homework to do till 2 in the morning or whatever. And sometimes you'll actually see them when we're out after work finishes, after the school finishes, which is 10 o'clock at night, 10:30, something like that. Then you'll be walking around, maybe going for a drink, and there are kids in the playgrounds playing soccer at that time, because it's the only time they get. Then they have to go home, and then they work. And you know what? One quick story aside here is a little child who was the shortest in the class, and every class he would take this pill. So I asked him one day, "What is this pill you're taking?" He said, "Oh, Daddy says it will help me grow." I said, "How long have you been taking it?" He said, 3 years. I said, "Well, it's obviously not working." "How much sleep are you getting? How many hours sleep are you getting a night?" "Oh, 3 if I'm lucky." Well, there's your issue. This kid's 9 years old and he's getting 3 hours sleep a night because he's got so much homework to do, and because he's in school until 10 o'clock at night.
Absolutely unbelievable what's happening in South Korea. It's absolutely unbelievable what a so-called education system will do that to its children. What sort of a world is it preparing them for?
And they still use corporal punishment as well there, so they beat the children.
Helen and I watched some time ago, actually, I think you may have done too, a short documentary by Michael Moore, the American documentary maker. He did an investigation into the Finnish, as in Finland, the Finnish education system. And what he learned was absolutely stunning to him, and frankly, it was stunning to us as well. And basically, what he learned in Finland, and directly from, first of all, the education minister at government level, then from high school head teachers, and also from the teachers themselves in secondary school, and then the students, that the system there is based upon no homework. No homework. And one thing that stuck in my mind, apart from that statistic, is that these typical students, as he was interviewing, he did a question session with them, and he said, "Well, what languages do you know?" And of course they know Finnish. They know English, because he was speaking in English, of course. And then they rattle off, we know Spanish, German, French. These young teenagers were proficient in 4, if not 5, European languages.
Wow.
And that's all without homework. I mean, they're not only that, but they start school a lot later in Finland. But it seems that the Finnish are locked onto it now. They know how to equip young students with the tools that will make them thrive in the future. And it's coming from within. It's being excited about what you're learning, and not cramming them, as you described very, very well earlier.
Yeah. I think it's super important, and as I said, the children are our future. We've forgotten what a lot of indigenous wisdom talks about, which is learning to look at any decision you make in life, that any decision has a consequence, right, down the line. So 7 generations principle, what is this going to look like if we implement this now? How is it going to be for our children's 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 children? I think I got that right.
Were you counting at the same time?
Yes.
That's such a good question. What would it be like for the seventh generation?
But sure, we don't honestly know. It's like having a crystal ball, you know. We can do our best, and I think at the core of it, people do want to do their best, but they've been kind of been blinded by this, you know, this societal sort of model that we're living in. And actually, I've got 2 children that live in Mexico, and the school that they go to it's a private class of children. There's actually, the eldest is 10 and the youngest, which is my daughter, is 4. Probably not ideal to have everyone of that age group together, yet they're still able to facilitate education within that class for the different age groups. And so, for example, my eldest daughter, who's 6, she's shown a real desire and inquiry into language. You know, she wants to know what these words mean, how you spell things, and that's through her own sort of
inquiring mind.
Exactly, you know, her own enthusiasm for it, which she's expressing,
right.
And the teacher will adapt to what the children are expressing and sharing. And
Wonderful.
You know, I tried to explore this subject with my own 2, and I think certainly early school, if not later school, it should be about finding out what is in that child, each individual child, to find out what it is that they've come to this earth with, a skill for this or a skill for that, whatever it is. And once you find that in somebody, and hopefully a very young person, you don't have to worry about the bug.
They
will fly.
Yes.
Probably don't even need to teach them much.
No,
you know.
no.
Oh, no.
Whatever they need to
No
know,
need.
they will learn for themselves.
And then the things that you guide them with are practical life skills and how to work through emotions and those sorts of things that we all need to know.
To know,
in
but
order
we're not
to,
taught.
Yeah.
So if something does happen that means that they can't learn the way they want to for a week or 2, you know, they have an injury or whatever, then they're not going to go on the self-destruct route because they can't get what they want in that moment. They've actually done some emotional work and they know how to navigate through those uncomfortable moments better. And that's a huge area for me of what I think needs massive attention in the world.
Well, you know, it's this subject of education, and of course everyone's got a different view on it, but it's something perhaps we could return to another time and perhaps touch on later today. But you mentioned a couple of things. The wisdom held by elders in the world, that's a subject you've mentioned, and we're going to come back to that and deal with that in some detail, I think. But perhaps we can go back to an earlier part and talk about dragonfly pictures. Because after you got sacked by one company or another, which is all about finding your true path, isn't it?
Yes.
And frankly, I've been there myself. But you started something which you'd studied for some time earlier, hadn't you?
That's right. Yes, I did study broadcasting at university. At the time, what it showed me was that, you know, the media is extremely biased, and I wanted nothing to do with that industry. So I put the camera down after I finished the university course, and that's when I went off to South Korea, etc. When I after, you know, that whole headache thing, getting back on track, that's when my life started to radically shift. So I went off to travel for a year in South America, and this is, I think, about 10 years after I'd finished university, and that's the first time I picked up a camera again. And I was going to work with a plant medicine called ayahuasca in Colombia, and I decided I was going to make a documentary of working with ayahuasca and and also learning from the shaman, asking him questions about how they view medicine and the mind and the body and the fact that they're not separate and all of these things are together and connected. And amazing things began to happen. That whole year of traveling through South America just opened up like a seamless dream, you know, of flow. I didn't have to plan anything. Everything just opened up. The moment I thought of something that I was going to do, everything that I needed was sort of it would just begin to appear for me. So for example, I didn't take a computer to edit the film. All I had was a camera. I thought I'd travel around for the year and then go home and make the documentary. But actually, when I got back from the ayahuasca, the house I was living in Bogota, someone moved in the exact same day that I arrived back from my experience with ayahuasca. And he was an editor. That was his job. He went out to do that every day, but he had his own computer suite with editing software and everything. And he gave me the key to his room so that I could edit the film.
Incredible.
And I finished it, a week or two before my visa was due to end. So I was thinking, what am I going to do next? I'd love to go and live in the Amazon. And then someone moved into the house who said, oh, I've just come out of the Amazon in Peru. Here's a name and address. So I emailed them and they said, oh, perfect timing. Yeah, we've got a volunteer at the moment. She's leaving the day before you want to arrive. There I was living in the Amazon for a couple of months, and then after that it just went on and on and on. Everything I wanted to do just manifested without any difficulty. It was all ease and grace and synchronicity, and that's when you know you're on track as well. When you're experiencing synchronicities and you've done some work on the self, you can recognize that the universe wants you to grow. It doesn't want you to be stagnant and stay the same. It wants to bring you experiences where your soul is growing, where you're evolving yourself, your awareness, your consciousness. That's what we all are. That's what our experiences are for. So I was ever so blessed. It was still up there with the best times of my life that year. And this is where Dragonfly Pictures was birthed. So that was my first film called Ayahuasca, A Chance to Evolve.
How can people see that now, Rob?
That's on my YouTube channel, yeah, which is, you can leave a link to, I guess, because it's quite long-winded.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes, yes.
Brilliant,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and so after I'd made Ayahuasca, A Chance to Evolve, I also wanted to make a film about the Amazon and the importance of that place, the beauty, the magic, the true biodiversity that is there, the amazing magic. Every day you'd see something that you had no idea existed. Creatures, plants, all sorts. So anyway, but Dragonfly Pictures was what eventually was the name of my company. I love dragonflies. And just decided I was going to start to try and make films and tell stories that could empower people, uplift people, help bring people and communities together, tell about what's going on in the world, about this shift in our awareness, in our consciousness, in the what we experience as reality, because you don't have to be a brain surgeon to recognize that the world is changing ever so rapidly and exponentially more so. And right now we're in very tumultuous and transformational times, which we can look at with a great deal of fear if we tune into the media all the time, or we can trust that this is for our growth, to show us that there is a better way. Things have to sometimes fall apart, and there are often blessings in disguise. You wouldn't that you can look back on in your life, certain moments that occur. In the moment it's horrible, but when you would look back, you're grateful that it happened, because it pushed you to grow to new heights, and to be able to see in a totally new and refreshing way. So we can look at the unknown with fear, or and trepidation, or we can embrace it. And I wouldn't mind bringing Paul in there to talk about. Because we met traveling, so we've lived a very sort of unsure life, from time to time, where we don't have an idea from one day to the next what we're going to be faced with. And Paul, you might want to add something to that.
Yeah, I guess for me, sum it up as trusting somehow between. I recognise along my journey that the heart was the centre of centres really, and and as I kind of recognised that there was this part of myself that was neglected and was talking to me, and I wasn't, I was not listening. That somewhere along the line, as I started to listen and I followed that sense of enthusiasm when things would come into my experience, or invitations maybe to do things, it became very clear that that enthusiasm was a much better choice to be making following that than my uncertainty, like Robin was sharing, and growing up in this society where not really sure what was flicking my switch, and I wasn't really sure, what direction to go in and whatnot. So yeah, for me it was trust. As I stepped onto that journey of unknown, sort of leaving England and starting my travels, I did not know what was going to come, and I followed the intuition that that would appear when I was faced with experiences and choices, and I've got to say it's been such a magical journey. It's something I'm writing down into a story to share with people, and for me it was following the heart space. It was listening to that inner voice.
For many people, they don't have, perhaps they don't have the courage. I think probably I was one of those people, to be honest. Don't have the courage to step out of society, cut across everything that everyone else expects you to do, and cut yourself free and go travelling. When I think back now to, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, the thought of cutting loose and travelling the world seemed as far from me as Sydney is today. But there are plenty of people that do this, and you two guys are kind of two of those people, which is fantastic. I have great admiration for you.
Totally, yes. I was just saying, the idea of travelling, I think it filled me with a lot of anxiety. It just wasn't on my radar.
And absolutely, for me, that was exactly what I was feeling, sort of going off to Mexico. The day I got the plane to leave, I cried most of the way to Mexico, basically. Probably about 5 hours of a 10-hour flight, I'd say.
Is that tears of what the heck have I done?
Yeah. I was giving up what was a perfectly comfortable and respectable life where I was appreciated and I was part of something, and but I knew from my own journey of growth and empowerment that I needed to spread my wings. I'd lived in a fairly small bubble, very sort of family orientated, and the idea of travelling absolutely just scared the shit out of me.
But you did it anyway.
Incredible, but you did it, and you were following your calling. That is totally courageous and totally trusting. And would you describe that as operating? I don't want to say operating. It's not the right word, is it? From the heart.
Yeah, really it was. I knew before, to make the decision that I was going to do this, it was such a resonance of alignment between what my heart wanted and what was sort of being invited, shared with me, and what I was uncovering. It was clear there was a focus that I wanted to follow, and up till that point it had all been very loose and comfortable, and in a 9-to-5 sort of job and fixed sort of conditions of life, and it does not really give you a lot of opportunity to get out there for life to come in and give you invitations for things.
Expansion.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And there's a train of thought. It is courageous to take that leap, like a leap of faith. But there's a train of thought that says you ought to do something that scares you once a day.
Yes, I love that saying. Do one thing every day that scares you. So that is also really enlightening, because it's easy to think that when someone is following their heart's desire, following a path of the heart, then that is actually, it feels great. It's easy to think, but it actually feels great. And what you've just described, Paul, explains that often it doesn't feel great at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really one of the things that I've shared. I trained as a yoga meditation teacher in heart yoga, basically. Yoga, the spiritual heart. And when I would take those retreats or offer those retreats, it really would be one of the things that I would make an emphasis on, is that takes a very bold soul to truly follow the heart, and that also often means making decisions which you can be judged for and ostracized for, and like family members and close friends, like can make sometimes the most extreme sacrifices to authentically follow the heart, to authentically feel enriched by the choices that we make and the
path that we
fruits of those choices, yeah.
Are you writing your Are you writing your book as a fairly factual memoir of?
It is. Well, it's written at the moment as a factual memoir. It's like a pretty much a linear course of events, touching on sort of who I was, sort of coming into the awakening process, and then taking that jump to Mexico, following the heart, and then really the story unfolds, sharing all the magic that happens because I followed the heart.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about that, and probably hopefully having you back here to talk to us about that particular book and the story it holds. Is it Susan Jeffers that wrote, or was it Susan Jeffers that wrote Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway?
It was Susan Jeffers. Exactly. What a fantastic title. What a fantastic book. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Yes.
One more on that note is life begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
Yes.
That's a great saying.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, something you touched on earlier, I think suggested that you were very much interested in doing film work about other people's lifestyles, life skills even, from around the world. And you mentioned something called Togetherland.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, this is a dear friends project, who, again, you can link this website Togetherland in the comments under this, and it's the principle of regenerative filmmaking. So if you take the idea that actually all of life is an unfolding story, then you could have a never-ending film that is not just something that you go to entertain yourselves by viewing it, but it can be interactive. You can participate within it. You become the author of your story. Your part in the whole story. No matter how big or small. In fact, there's no such thing as small. Everyone's got an integral piece of the puzzle to bring, whatever it is. There's no such thing as small, because of everything ripples out. So, what we're encouraging is that everyone to start to tell their own story. Everyone has something of value to offer, and it's time for everyone to start to empower themselves to tell their story publicly, to offer their gifts, what they're good at, some people are great at just listening, for example, and other people need people to listen to them. It can be something as simple as that, just something supportive for others, or it can be something, if someone's got a grand idea for some regenerative environmental practice, to put that into place in a community and to share it with the next community and to help it spread and grow and ripple out. There are many, many aspects to this Togetherland thing. I just wanted to bring it in as a part of the puzzle as well, because Dragonfly Pictures is sort of like a precursor to it, where I want to make documentaries where you can see that all of these things are already happening in the world. For example, there are transformational festivals where if you go to this, I went to one in Panama called Tribal Gathering, or one in England this year called All About Love. If you go to these kinds of events, you can see for yourself that what we're talking about, it's not woo-woo, it's not out there, it's not some wacky idea that's in the ether somewhere that's never going to be able to become reality. On a micro level, this reality that we're discussing and evolving into is already existing in pockets all over the world. And it is spreading, it is rippling out, it is growing. That awareness is growing. The more of us that jump on board the gravy train, so to speak, the quicker and the more exponential that will be. I don't know if you've heard of the 100th monkey effect.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So there's, like I say, these events, the vibrational level of the beings there brings such magic to the point where it's no longer moment by moment, it becomes miracle by miracle. You remember that everything is a miracle. We are all magicians with amnesia, walking around without a clue at the moment. You know, if we're listening to that media, the mainstream media
on the television,
it's the real virus. It is the real virus. It's a fantasy world, and it's not a nice fantasy. It's dystopian, and it's only going to get more and more confusing and chaotic and crazy, because it wasn't designed to make sense. It was designed to confuse us, to keep us in a state of fear, a lower vibrational reality where we're not able to activate those parts of ourselves which further our growth, further our evolution, further our consciousness and our awareness and our connection to each other, to nature, to the natural world. It's distracted us from all of that.
Yes, it has.
And
absolutely.
You know, entertainment. If you take the word apart, so enter, you're entering the tain. If you look at the word tain, it's a mirror. Okay, so and then ment, the mind, mirror of the mind. So what you're watching is sort of. Also, you're in an alpha wave. Your brain is in alpha waves when you're watching the TV. So that means you're in a suggestible state, hypnotic state. You're not. A way to describe this is you're not in a two-way street. You're just accepting what's being given to you.
Yes.
You know, through the screen, through these black mirror devices, and yeah, I'm not saying, you know, it's ironic because obviously people will be on the internet listening to this now, but we desperately need to get back to nature, to not be afraid of nature. Nature wants us to grow. Nature is we are nature, and the natural world is perfection, really. We've completely forgotten this. We've severed our connection, and not only to nature but to the idea that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. If we can get to go back to nature, we can learn how things really truly operate and work again. So using things like biomimicry.
Yeah. Whilst you were saying that, I was thinking that it's as if in some part of us as human beings we've been closed down and we've forgotten who we really are. You said much that we've forgotten that we are actually magicians. We can manifest things in a most exciting way. And you seem to be doing that when you were in South America. Now take something like a parsnip, for example. It just gets on with life as a parsnip, doesn't it? It turns into the most beautiful parsnip there can be. And the universe is giving it all it needs to be that parsnip. But we've kind of lost our way, haven't we? We've kind of tried to reinvent ourselves with things like iPhones and TVs and such. But okay, so... Well,
it's important to state, I think, that the technology itself is not the problem. The problem is who's influencing what's being fed through the technology.
Yes, that's right.
You know, who's directing them, and what is the message? What is it, empowering or is it disempowering?
Yeah.
Is it facile and vacuous, or is it deep and enriching?
Yeah.
There's a neutrality to technology. It's the same with anything really.
Yes, of course it is, yes.
It depends on who's wielding the influence over it.
Is a pen you could write something horrible with a pen,
exactly.
You know, or you can write something beautiful.
Of course.
You want to use it and how you facilitate it, for sure.
Exactly, yes. I mean, it's a telephone. It means a communication. It's not intrinsically evil. It's a way people communicate with each other. But it is a two-way, unlike certain other things like the television, which of course is one way.
Yeah.
I mean,
you guys will probably remember the God, it's just gone out of my mind actually. Have you said that?
We can't remember it either.
Can you remember it first?
It was technology, and hey, it will come back if it needs to.
What you were saying actually, again a moment ago, about this idea of people recording, you know, what's going on with them and life for them. There's no better time for this to be done now, really. I mean, we were put on to what we're doing now in part by a fairly well-known journalist, to be honest, who let it be known, and still does, that everyone in the community can become a community journalist. And the reason for that is that technology is such now that someone with a smartphone, call it an iPhone if you like, or whatever device you use, can come loaded with everything you need to be a citizen journalist.
Yes.
Which means, I would say, that in most parts of the world today, people can record their stories, their personal stories or their neighbour's story, their friends or family's stories, and boom, it can be on the net for the entire world to enjoy. And there's no better time for that. I mean, it's all at our fingertips now in what is effectively, for people in the Western world, a relatively cheap device to own and use. And we can see that the power of that can be utterly enormous. So what you were talking about there with the Together Lamp project could be exceptionally powerful, I feel.
Absolutely, and I'd love to use this opportunity to make an invitation to people to reach out to me, to Brett, who's the custodian of Togetherland, and to anyone else that's, you might want to link into this. But for Dragonfly Pictures as well, that we need help to, as you said, anyone can do this. It's if you know how to operate your phone and you've been taking videos when you've gone on a tourist trip or whatever, all you've got to do is point and shoot, and get the message out that there's this going on. Also, I mean, we've obviously seen that there's all sorts of censorship going on, right? So everyone being able to film what's actually happening, because I would say one more thing about the screen element, the television, is that they've had the technology for a long time to be able to manipulate images to look real that aren't real. So CGI, everyone's familiar with CGI. The idea is that Oliver Reed, who was in the Gladiator film, he died before that was finished, before he'd finished filming his scenes. So there are some scenes of him that are him alive in that film, and there are some scenes of him in that film where he was CGI made to look real. And I can't tell the difference. So if they had and that was, how many years ago was that film? And I'm sure
20 years old now?
Something like that. So, if they had the ability to do that then 20 years on, it stands to reason to me that they have the ability to do that and more. And you cannot trust anything you see as real on the TV anymore.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. That's a very good point.
Well, there's a big subject indeed. My goodness me. Absolutely. Well, Rob, there's another initiative we know that you're engaged with, which is moving towards being formally launched, which again has a degree of high excitement about it. And I'm talking about the Global Festival, which the true name is Global
Unity Festival.
Unity Festival. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, tell us about the Global Unity Festival, because that's kind of in the same kind of ballpark as this, I think.
Yeah, so this was another one of those wonderful sort of moments where out of nowhere someone got in contact with me and said, hey, I've got this idea for a global festival experience. And I said, oh, we were working on something like that a couple of years ago when we were living together in a place in Holland called a Synergy Hub. And at that time we were going to call it Global Freedom Fest. And the principle of that was that we were going to have synchronized events across the planet, live streamed on the internet, expressing freedom.
And when was this?
This was in 2016.
You must have known something.
2016, 2017, I think. Yeah, 2016. And anyway, the custodian of that project sadly died. And so the universe lifted it up, and dropped it off with the guy who's now, whose birth child is the Global Unity Festival. His name being Alex. And so I've done we've put together a site, a platform on which at the moment operates on the first Sunday of every month, where on every continent there's different events going on, and you can tune in.
And that's happening now.
That's been happening since January. It's on a small scale at the moment. We need to do a big promotional push at some point with sort of revamping a few aspects of the site. It's one of those things when you love something so much, it's hard to let go of it and just let it do it
fly.
like a parent and a child.
Yeah.
So there's a moment which will have to come where it's pushed out into the world and we promote it, and then I think what will occur is that people who resonate with it will appear and they will add something to it and it will grow and evolve very naturally on its own. But yeah, at the moment I'd say the custodian is he's still trying to make it this perfect thing before it releasing it to the world. But it's extremely exciting. On there we've got all of these different aspects of what I would suggest is the many ways of returning to self, to the true I am. So they're all practices that anyone can use, and obviously certain practices will work for certain people and other ones will work for other people. So from meditation, guided meditation, breath work, yoga, all different kinds of practices are on there. Music, conscious music. You've got charitable acts, random acts of kindness, laughter yoga, just people talking. Teachers of spiritual guidance and all other things you could think of will be on there, and all of those ones I've mentioned are already listed, but it can be added, and anyone can join it and become a host if they feel like they've got something to share. So if you want to get on there, we can leave a link to that too. That would be wonderful, because that will start to grow it organically without even having promoted it. And obviously it will be a good thing for you to empower yourself as a creator being of divine love and light, who's remembering who they are, that you're here to share your gifts with other people, that we're not here to so I'd say we're moving from a service to self model of reality to a model of service to others, because when we serve others we're actually growing collectively, and this moves us towards talking about unity consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Well, that
absolutely
sounds
wonderful.
absolutely wonderful, and with certainly there will be details in the show notes for this. So and we're already excited to take a look and see what's going on already with the festival. Okay. So this is all part of the reawakening of the human strain. Now, most people, I think, are completely oblivious to even the term, the reawakening. So, can you, Rob, just explain a little bit about what you believe the reawakening is all about, and more importantly, perhaps, is why it's needed?
Oh goodness, how to do this in a short... Okay, well, yeah, reawakening is a good way of putting it initially, because actually, we could say we're moving into an unknown future, but actually I'd say we're moving to an ancient future. That makes sense, because we've lost our connection. It's not that we never had it. So when we regain that, then we'll remember and restructure, recalibrate, reorganize ourselves individually and collectively, to be in balance and harmony with the natural world, to work with life force, not against it, to turn everything the right way up, because I would suggest that a lot of the world right now is completely inverted. Everything's upside down.
It certainly is.
We can talk about that a little bit going forward, but let's keep it on the positive side for now. And that is unity consciousness is where we're all headed. That is to say that inside our bodies, on a micro level, we have billions of things going on every day, right? And millions of cells all doing something that keeps our body working. Our biological computer, you might say. And it's an absolute miracle. It is the technology once we remember how to operate it properly. But think about it like this. People go through their daily lives. The only time you will ever recognise that there's something wrong with your body, it will give you a signal. It will tell you in some way, right? So something won't feel right. What do I mean by feel right? Well, when everything feels right, you don't really know, you can't feel anything that's going on inside, right? Because everything's...
And perhaps you're not meant to.
You're not meant to.
Yeah.
And do we thank our body? Do we thank ourselves for the work they're doing? Do we even have gratitude for that? We're completely oblivious to the amount of incredible stuff that is going on inside of our bodies to regulate our
Well-being.
Our well-being, yeah, and our makeup, what makes us tick and move and everything else. So once we understand that if one cell is sick, that means that, you know, all of the other cells rush to it to figure out what's going on, to stop that disease, to stop that disease. Then everything's in working order. Then on the macro level, we're one human, but there's billions of humans on the planet. But similarly to inside the body, if there's one cell that's sick, every cell is suffering in some way. So if there's one human that's sick, every human is suffering in some way. And when you come to this awareness and this understanding, it makes it nigh on impossible to ever want to do any harm to any other being. It's not just humans. I mean, this everything's connected. All beings have a place and a purpose in this world. So stepping on an ant is going to get progressively harder to do. You know, obviously you'll do it by accident, but let's say if you have an aversion to spiders, you'll find a different way of dealing with that rather than killing it, because you'll start to be appreciative of the role and the purpose that it has in the world. Yeah. So unity consciousness essentially is this, what has led to all of the problems in the world is quite one word: separation. The illusion of separation, that we're all separate from everything else, from the universe, from ourselves, from nature, from the community. That is the problem.
You know, saying that, I was thinking in my mind about something that I've said so many times before. When as a society, we measure where we are in life, I believe that society should look at the bottom rung. And the bottom rung includes all those people that are homeless, hungry, are unwell in some way. And for me, that is where the human race has got to. That's our bottom rung, and that's as far as we've got. When we can say all of us have enough to eat, all of us have shelter, all of us are well, then that's our new level.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's only when the whole of society understands that, in my view, that we can really make serious strides forward. It doesn't mean to say that we're going to achieve that overnight, of course, but to understand that is, I think, a very important thing. And I couldn't help thinking that when you were...
No, absolutely huge, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it really stems from this, it's an illness of the mind, you know, it's a disidentification or misidentification with who we think we are and the world outside of us, and maybe even like separating ourselves from the idea of a problem, you know, that it's all really part of us, it's all included, and I really love what you share there, that we can't sort of say we're doing great as a society if there's a foundation of people that are inherently, you know, malnourished or lacking in shelter, or ill mentally or physically. We all need uplifting. You know?
Another aspect of this, of course, is that here we are. We're all kind of okay in life in a sense. We're not one of those persons I referred to, but the truth is, we all live in fear of being there. I mean, you know, it's been said before, isn't it, that some people are 3 paychecks away from being homeless. And at some level or other, that will sit in people's minds as a material fear. And there's probably a great swathe of the population that feel that they are 3, 4, 5, or maybe a few more months paychecks away from being in exactly that position. So as a society, I think it would be a great step forward if we all understood that and then seek to raise that bottom rung of the ladder such that we don't have to worry about these things anymore. Our own efforts are appreciated and rewarded, but if we come into hard times, then we're caught, if you like, and we're nurtured back to being fully energized as we would prefer to be.
Yeah, and it's kind of like having our basic needs met.
It
Yeah.
is
Really
exactly
isn't it?
that.
It's-
Yes.
You know, until everyone on the planet recognises and has their basic needs met, which is food, shelter,
Yes.
you know, company, you know, these sort of things.
Which again,
then we're all
technology
suffering, really.
can do a lot of that now. I mean, it can, you know, automation is approaching on a grand scale. What that can be used for could be brilliant or it could be terrible, and it can take away a lot of the menial, what I describe as bullshit jobs that people do, where they would be freed to follow their passion, do what they love, which everyone has something again of that nature, and things that are suffering at the moment, such as agriculture and so on. You can use technology to really help scale up and feed everyone. There's a plethora of ways that technology can be such a help to get us back up to this next run of the ladder. But
That's absolutely right.
if only if the right people, you know, if people who want to really do something about those that are homeless, those that don't have food to eat, those that are in need in whatever way, because our system still at the moment it doesn't seem to be interested in fixing those issues, if you see what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
That's absolutely
See it.
right. I do wonder actually if it's, I sometimes wonder but whether it's the awareness of that only being 3 paychecks away from homelessness, but actually causes the inability to do anything about it. It does the opposite of what you would think it would.
Well,
That's
Rob,
one aspect only.
we were talking at some point earlier about the fact that governments, or those people that are in governments, have been given the task of sorting these things out, and the truth is they haven't. But oddly enough, we keep giving them another opportunity to sort it out, don't we? And it was Einstein, wasn't it, that said...
Oh yeah. So the very definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, expecting different results.
Absolutely.
And what do we do?
Right.
We give them another chance, knowing full well what's going to happen. And the picture today is no different to how it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's exactly the same. So...
Yeah, there's all ways possible. There's so many ways that are possible to take care of the homeless, take care of those that don't have enough to eat. There's more than enough food on the planet for everyone.
Exactly.
You know,
It's really
absolute abundance
yeah,
for all
absolutely.
is incredibly possible. It's just that it's an attitude shift that's needed more than
Yes.
anything else, and the way that we view those with less. That has to fundamentally shift, because actually, you know, as you said, it could be a couple of paychecks away that you're in the same position as those people, but also back to the unity consciousness. If they're suffering as a result of that, you're suffering.
Yeah.
Really, on the molecular, the structure, you know, the actual reality beyond what we see. Everything's in dis-ease.
Yeah.
If one thing's not in harmony.
So the awakening process, in part, is the realisation of exactly that, isn't it? But it's more than that, of course. And I'd like to think that it's going to encompass a revolution in how we administer our... I'm hesitating here because I'm not quite sure how we might refer to these in the future. I wanted to say country, I wanted to say nation, but if I said areas, there's a revolution that's needed in how we administer the area. So personally, I'm thinking do we actually need these politicians? And is there another system that we could all adopt and work to? My guess is that somewhere in the world, a workable system that doesn't involve politicians will be going on. We might find it in the Amazon rainforest. We might find it in the depths of Australia, Aboriginal Australia. I don't know, but my guess is...
Certainly I can say from personal experience of travelling to indigenous communities that, how do I put this? In the Western world, okay, we have all of this material abundance, but there are a lot of people who are the have-nots, and there are few and fewer and fewer as we go on who are the haves. And they have more and more and more. But is it making them happy? An African tribe calls it wetiko, you know, this idea that the more, a mental illness, again, disease of the mind, where the idea is that the more you accumulate, you know, in terms of possessions and everything, because this is the ego mind, that this is all there is. So security and make sure I gather as much as I can for myself, and this sort of protection of the self, that's what the ego does. This is not the only part of who we are, yet it's what the Western world has, again, through severing our connection with spirit, it's living fully in that reality. And having more, if you double your cars or your houses or whatever, it's not making people happier. In fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
We've got more mental illness going on here and in America and Canada and places than you will ever find in indigenous communities. They don't have this dis-ease. They don't have, their elders are dancing around a fire every night. They're not on crutches. They don't have ailments that we get as we get older in these countries. They don't have outbreaks of I mean, we're told that there's all sorts of nasty things out there, you know, in these areas. I remember going to the doctor's surgery back in 2014 before going off to South America, and them pushing all of these injections on me.
Yes.
By saying, you know, there's malaria here and there, everywhere. So the whole continent of South America was a red zone on the map on the wall in the surgery. I got there. Everywhere I went, oh, is there any problem with malaria? I've got some oh no, it doesn't exist here. It doesn't exist. No, I haven't had a case of that for 30 years. So it's pushing fear again, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But, to come back around, I think I've sort of summed it up there. What was the initial point? If we started on.
Oh gosh, I'll have to go back through the notes.
Don't worry, we can edit it.
But actually,
where were we?
whilst we try and think about that, we talked earlier about this concept of, well, it's not a concept, is it? Fear is a reality, and everyone understands it. And I think we're all agreed here that there is a great deal of fear that's coming out of the main source, however you want to define that. And there really isn't a need to be fearful. And we talked, didn't we, about the red ant, black ant thing. Ah, yeah. Tell us about that.
Oh, this is brilliant. So, I mean, okay, what you have at the moment is in any area of our lives, if you're listening to governments and you're listening to specifically the media again, then what you've got going on is pros and cons, left and right, ups and downs, everything that is polarized.
Yes.
To keep us separate again and divided instead of coming together. And I would suggest very strongly that this is done absolutely on purpose, because it is so utterly everywhere, you know, from vaxxing to anti-vaxxing and left and right in politics, and I mean, there's so many that you can go on about. In everything that comes up, are you pro-life, I mean, silly things. How can we even have got to this level? Then you know, they're adding more and more ways to identify the self, which are creating smaller and smaller boxes, which mean that you're going to be offended by more and more things. So it's ways to sub-identify the self is the way I should describe that. so that, you know, through this LGBTQRXYZIA plus thing, which will be the whole alphabet before long, but because it's more and more ways to sub-identify, which again creates this ability for people to feel hard done by when they're not included. I would suggest this is quite a toxic area, this wokeism stuff, but definitely to.
But you said earlier, didn't you, that we were talking before about the fact that you can put black kids with white kids and
Right.
they will get on
Yeah.
as if there are no differences between them. They'll be fascinated by the differences, but that won't mean anything, but
No.
they'll get on fine.
No, they'll get on fine. And
The red ants and black ants thing,
Yeah.
apparently, I believe the story is that in
Yeah.
a jar, if you put 100 red ants in a jar with 100 black ants,
yeah,
they'll get on well too.
until someone starts
Yes,
to
just-
rattle and shake the jar.
Yeah.
And they don't know that someone's doing that, so they think it's the other ants that are getting itchy, and so they start attacking one another. But actually, it's this third party
Right.
that's operating from the shadows or from
Yeah.
above, or from somewhere that they can't quite recognise or see.
Yeah.
That is shaking the pot to stir them up, and to create this uncomfortable false reality that is manipulated on purpose.
And a division, in this case between two groups, but in reality, to encourage people to divide too much, we'll all be totally alone. We won't want anything to do with each other because dealing with other people is just too unpleasant. And that, haven't we seen that playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in so many ways that the idea is more and more people are spending less and less time with their neighbours, doing neighbourly things or community things, activities. I remember as a kid driving back into my mum's village, and there were people out in the gardens having barbecues, tombolas or fetes and things, and all sorts of community events, kids playing sports everywhere, you name it. Now you drive through it's
a ghost town.
Yeah, it's a ghost town. There's nothing going on. There's no, people aren't even out in the gardens very much anymore.
That would be due to global warming, I think.
Right, and then you've got the fact that in our village, they say the village barbecue. So there's like one a year.
The
It's good
approved
there's even one, to
barbecue.
be fair. I'm sure
Thank
there's many
goodness
that
there's the
don't
one.
have any, but yeah, it's about coming together as community, and I think as well, like recognising the revolution starts from within for everyone,
Yeah.
and finding that way to connect with ourselves and that ability to connect with others, and opening up to other people's expressions or opinions or perspectives on life. That everything's okay. It is. Everything
It is okay, yes.
Okay.
And it's us that attaches the meaning or the right or the wrong to it, and coming back to purely being the witness of the unfolding experience is the neutrality, stepping all out of the mind, which is in duality.
That personally identifies with something, right?
Mm.
So yeah, if you can step back and observe it with neutrality.
Yeah.
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 But going back to the question, do we need politicians? I would say politicians, to me, is my view, are driven by motives which I would describe as, frankly, narcissistic. And they're self-serving. And the system is also narcissistic and self-serving.
Mm.
Well, Helen, you've got an article coming out about this. I know this very week on that very subject.
I have, yes.
So we'll put that in the show notes. That should be an interesting read for a lot of people.
Brilliant.
But I hesitated earlier, and I was trying to think what it was that was going through my mind to say, and I remember what it was now. And it was, speaking of service and leadership, these leaders that we have around the world currently, they're all, as I think you're suggesting, they're all in it for their own gain. And somebody else's agenda, perhaps. And what we need to get to in this new world after a reawakening, I think, is something called, or a concept called servant leadership, where the leaders are there to serve the people they are leading. And when they finish serving, or other people judge that they've finished serving, then they step down. But that's not what we have currently.
It's certainly not, no. Leaders should serve their people, but people shouldn't serve them.
Yeah, and in the embodiment of like a king or a queen, it really is that that human being that has stood up, you know, that has really mastered the art of being human, in a sense of relating, of serving, of and a lot of these sort of monarchies that we have don't really,
They don't embody
to me they don't embody it. Yeah, they, you know, the Queen might well have been a lovely woman who did a job with a lot of dignity, yet at the same time you could argue whether there really was true service to the people. You know, that's open to debate. It would take a bit of an historian, researcher to sort of really dig deep as to what role she did play. But on the face of it, you know, she it was the face of the country and the monarchy. But you'd want to see a king or a queen really leading by example and getting there by merit. You know, like I would follow a king or a queen. You know, if I really felt that they were in integrity and they were leading the way of progression and
authentic,
upliftment and
If they were a servant leader, perhaps.
yeah, exactly. When it comes to that kind of the karma yoga, that service is that selfless action. You're putting yourself out of the way, or the little self, and allowing that omnipresent self to.
So it reminds me of a quote by one of my favourite writers, Khalil Gibran, and he said, "Work is love made visible." And you know, to be in, it just came up, I think, because to be in service, when you do make others feel good, a natural byproduct of that is that it makes you feel great.
Yes.
You can't help it. You know, when you bring smiles to people's faces, when you help someone feel better, when you pick them up if they've fallen down, it will make you feel great. I don't know anyone that's ever said, "Oh, I helped this person today and I feel terrible."
That's so true. That is so true. Doing something to help other people does make you feel great. It does. It's both. It's like a different context. Oscar Wilde once says about loving somebody and being loved is to feel the sun from both sides, and it's similar, isn't it? If you help somebody, actually, you get something back, and it is feeling the sun from both sides.
Well, Paul, you mentioned the subject, the monarchy, which clearly puts people on one side of a divide.
That's another one of those.
To the other,
yeah.
that's right. Now,
False divide.
The false divide. And there are people that are very passionate about the monarchy, and there are people that are very indifferent about the monarchy, and perhaps others that feel a degree of something else about the monarchy. Well, all this is going to be explored, I know, in the coming months. And we're sat here talking in the very week after the Queen, after 70 years of reign, has now died. I touch on this point in an article to be published this week, and it's connected, oddly enough, of all things, to a change at another level. Last week, in the same week that the Queen died, we acquired the latest Prime Minister in the form of Liz Truss. And to put a smile on your face, and perhaps some other faces, we will put in the show notes, if you're agreeable, a little extract of a piece done by a comedian called... Now, let me get this right. It's Nabil Abdul Rashid. And he, I'm sure, will put a smile on some people's faces, but he tells it how it is. So hopefully we will have that in. But this afternoon we've travelled a long way. But I also know that we've touched on some very big subjects, and it would be really interesting if we can come back together and explore more deeply some of these subjects. Education we talked about, of course. A new political system, maybe we can cover that one, but certainly the reawakening.
Certainly that. One thing I'd love to do before we finish, if we can, is the idea of natural justice, because as things go, we've seen it over again. as we've talked about briefly in cycles of time, when governments get out of check, when they get out of their checks and balance, when they go a bit tyrannical, let's say, they do start coming after people's properties and so on. So it's important. Another way to empower people is to remember your sovereignty, your inalienable rights. And Paul has been working on the language side of things for a while, and writes some wonderful poetry, and I'd love him to share the C'est tu Kavi?
C'est tu Kavi?
Yeah, poem.
Yeah.
Which is just a reminder to people of how this system has sort of usurped our inalienable rights, and it, I would say, is high time that we look at how to remember and reclaim our true sovereignty from the state again, to start to detach, to decouple every way we can. When we don't like what the governments are doing, we should not be paying taxes to them, for example, and so on. There's all manner of things that, if we come together in numbers, we have the power to transform this reality for the better very, very quickly.
Well, thank you, Rob. Again, that's a subject which is very broad and deep, and it would be good to come back together and explore that as a single subject, because that's as I see it, fundamentally important, and a number of people need to understand this more deeply than they currently do.
Indeed, yes.
But Paul, what are you going to read for us?
It's called For the Claim of Life.
There we are.
Do ye know about the C'est tu Kavi? It's a law that says ye dead or lost at sea. We lost control to pirates of our common law lands, to maritime admiralty. So when ye stand up in court and shout ye name out forth, it's not an advisable place to be. You've just docked your vessel in a dock, in foreign territory. It's a trick, it's a trap, it's a total fraud. Ignore their letters, don't walk through those doors. Get off their ships, get out of their seas. Vacate their riverbanks and fake currencies. I spell ye some great advice. Stand up for ye rights by learning to read and write, for the claim of life.
How about that?
Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Rob, for remembering to have that read, and thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you both for joining us today, and for a most enlightening talk,
It has
and
been.
interesting. And as I said earlier, it'd be great to have you back again to explore more deeply the subjects that
Absolutely.
we've touched on today.
We'd love to.
I look forward
We'd love
to
to. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
good travels.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for having us.
You have been listening to our podcast In Town Today with Rob Uzzell of Dragonfly Pictures, based near Cirencester, and Paul Baxter. Check out the podcast show notes for details about Dragonfly Pictures, the website, and to view Rob's previous film projects. Do also look out for our further podcasts on our In Conversation page of the Connect website. It is here where we will be meeting more guests to talk about their businesses and their fascinating lives, or both. Until we meet back with you again next time,
It's goodbye from me, Helen King.
and from me, David Charles.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.